All right, let's jump right in because we're talking about a major escalation today. There's an incredibly tense standoff happening in the Gulf, and believe me, the whole world is watching. So let's get into it.
So this is where things really kicked off. The situation just exploded with this social media post from the president. It's blunt, it's dramatic, and it lays out a military action that has seriously raised the stakes. Now, that while room part, pretty sure that's a typo for engine room, but the message? Crystal clear.
And this is the main event. A U.S. Navy destroyer caught an Iranian ship that was trying to run the naval blockade. The crew wouldn't stop, so the U.S. ship fired a shot and disabled it. And this is a big deal, right? This is the first time in this whole operation that U.S. forces have actually boarded and seized an Iranian vessel. It's now in the hands of U.S. Marines. Okay, so how in the world did we get to this point? To really get it, we've got to look at the exact flashpoint for this whole confrontation. It all goes down near the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy has set up what they're officially calling a quarantine, which, let's be honest, is basically a blockade. The whole point is to stop sanctioned goods, especially oil, from getting out of Iran. And this Iranian cargo ship? Well, it decided to make a run for it.
And you have to understand, this whole thing is happening on a total knife's edge. There's this super fragile, temporary ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, and it's set to expire in just a matter of days. And of course, both sides are pointing fingers, blaming each other for the breakdown.
And this is where we get into the classic he said, she said. So who broke the ceasefire? Well, depends on who you ask. The U.S. says, hey, Iran shot first, but Iran fires back saying, your blockade is the violation. It's a perfect standoff where each side is painting the other as the aggressor.
And if you look at it from Tehran's side, they're basically saying the problem is bigger than just one incident. They're pointing the finger right back at Washington, talking about excessive demands and a constant shift in staff. It really sounds like they're so fed up, they might just bail on the upcoming talks altogether. Which, yeah, that's not good.
All of this tension is really just layered on top of the one central issue that's driving this whole conflict: the huge and, frankly, seemingly unbridgeable fight over Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. position here isn't complicated. They've been very clear. They're demanding Iran completely dismantle any path to a nuclear weapon. That means, 1, ship all your highly enriched uranium out, 2, stop making more of it, and 3, give up the entire ambition of ever building a bomb. Full stop.
But here's the problem. Iran comes back and says, hold on, it's our sovereign right to have a nuclear program. And right there, that's the massive chasm. One side says, get rid of it all. The other side says, it's our right to have it. I mean, how do you even begin to negotiate from there?
Which brings us right back to today. It really feels like we're in a deal or else kind of moment, where any hope for diplomacy is happening with a ticking clock in the background and some very, very direct threats out in the open.
And just look at this timeline. It shows you how insane the pressure is. Tomorrow, the U.S. delegation flies out. Tuesday, talks are supposed to kick off. But then, boom, Wednesday, the ceasefire is over. That gives them what, like a day? One single day to solve this whole mess before things could get really bad, really fast. And then you've got this quote from the president, which is basically the definition of an ultimatum. He's saying, look, we're offering you a fair deal, but if you don't take it, and then he lays out the alternative. The U.S. is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. That is about as direct as a threat can get.
So, back home in Washington, is this a good strategy? Well, it's splitting the political world right down the middle. You've got Democrats saying this is just reckless, it's escalatory, and simply unhelpful. But on the other side, you have Republicans arguing that, no, this is the only way, that you need this kind of intense, necessary pressure just to get Iran to the table.
So let's zoom out for a second, because this is so much bigger than just one ship. We have to talk about the wider stakes here, for the economy, for the entire region, and for the future of Iran itself.
This blockade, it's really an economic chokehold. Think about how it works. First, you stop the oil from getting out. Then all of Iran's storage tanks start to fill up, and up, and up. Eventually, they're full. So what happens? They literally have to stop pumping oil out of the ground, which could cause irreparable damage to their #1 industry. It's turning their greatest asset into a massive liability.
And of course, this whole crisis reopens that old, very heated debate over the previous Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. Critics are basically saying, see, we told you so.
Their argument is that the deal was never a permanent fix. It gave Iran a ton of cash from sanctions relief, which they argue just went to fund proxy forces across the Middle East and didn't really stop the nuclear threat for good.
And we can't forget what's happening inside Iran, layered on top of all of this. The regime is facing serious unrest at home. There have been huge protests against the government, and they've been brutally suppressed. When you see numbers like 30,000 to 50,000 people killed, that's a whole other layer of instability that absolutely affects how Iran's leaders are making decisions on the world stage.
So here we are. Diplomacy and military threats are in a direct collision course. What's going to happen? Is this high-stakes standoff going to lead to a new deal, a much wider, much scarier conflict, or maybe something else entirely, a transformation inside Iran? It's a massive gamble. And honestly, the only thing we know for sure is that the next few days are going to be absolutely crucial.